This is Legislature's The Inside Story. Thank you for listening. I'm the host, Tim Story, CEO of the National Conference of State Legislatures, NCSL. My guest is Cedric King, a retired Army Master Sergeant, speaker, and author who will be the keynote speaker at NCSL's Legislative Summit in Indianapolis this August. Master Sergeant King joined the Army in 1995, rising to a leadership position in the elite Army Rangers. He graduated from several distinguished Army schools and earned a chest full of medals and ribbons. On his third combat deployment in Afghanistan in 2012, Cedric was leading a patrol in a small village when he stepped on an improvised explosive device and suffered horrific injuries, including the loss of both his legs. With the help of his fellow soldiers and the extraordinary skills of the military medical teams, he survived those wounds. Just 21 months after that day, King did what most of us think is unbelievable. He ran the Boston Marathon on prosthetic blades. He hasn't stopped since. He's competed in marathons, triathlons, he's written books, talked to audiences all over the country, and he's talked about his injuries and why that opened him up to the possibilities that we all have in our lives. Master Sergeant King shared some of his journey and the lessons he's learned in this podcast, but I'm going to invite you to Indianapolis because you're going to want to hear the whole story. Cedric King is my guest today, and I have to tell you, Cedric, before I just kick it right to you, I've been really looking forward to this. I know a fair amount about your story. I heard you speak in Florida maybe 6-7 weeks ago, actually. I'm really happy, really excited to spend some time with you.
I appreciate you having me out.
As you probably know, we're the National Conference of State Legislature. We work for people who make the laws, people who help the people who make the laws, write the bills, think about policy, think about serving as a kind of service. And so I think that's something we're going to talk about. I want to tell right off the top, we have arranged for you to come and talk to our big summit. We're going to bring 5,000-6,000 people together in Indianapolis in August, and you're going to be there. So, I kind of want to get people a little taste today. So I got to go hear this guy and get to know him a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's been a while since I've been in Indianapolis, but that'll be great, man.
Also on our program is a fellow named, he played football, Peyton Manning. You probably heard of him. So that's our plan for Indianapolis. Where are you today, by the way? Tell me where you are.
So I live in Atlanta. I'm here in Atlanta, just north of the city. Actually, Peyton came to the hospital. We're going to get into how I got to the hospital, but actually Peyton visited us in the hospital. I got a video of us playing catch. He threw me a football. I wanted to know what a real NFL pass would feel like, and he took it easy on me. But it was one of those times. I got a video. I got to shoot it over to you.
Pretty cool. I mean, not a lot of good people in real world get to play catch with Peyton Manning. But this is about you coming in, and I think your story is just really phenomenal. I'm going to get to it in just a second. But, hey, I want to know just a little bit more about Cedric King. And are you from Georgia? Are you from that part of the world?
No, I'm actually not. We were blessed enough to live here in Atlanta, but I actually grew up in North Carolina in a real small farming town, real small place, about an hour north of Raleigh, right there on the Virginia-North Carolina border. The name of it's called Norlina, North Carolina. It's in Warren County, North Carolina. I will tell you, man, it's just one of those places where everybody knows everybody. I went to school with the same kids I went to kindergarten with. I graduated high school. I mean, real small place,
I'm not going to jump ahead too much, but people are going to find out. Master Sergeant, 82nd Airborne, is that right? You wind up in Fort Bragg at some point. So what made you – so you're in North Carolina, and you're like, I'm going to join the United States Army. What made you decide to do that?
I had family members I had an uncle that was in the 82nd Airborne Division. I didn't think I was smart enough to go to college, man. I always thought that going to college was one of those things that if you went to NC State or if you went to Carolina or if you went to East Carolina, Shaw University or A&T or Central, all these places, man, you had to have a really good grade. You want to go to Duke. These were all the kids that were like principals list, National Honor Society. These kids were only kids that were going to college. So for me, I was like, man, I'm not smart. I didn't think that I didn't think I was college material, And my mom's a single mom at the time. I didn't want to go and waste any money. She would have had to take out a loan. It was just, I wasn't going to do that to my mom. She worked way too hard to raise me for me to go to school and squander any of the money that she would put together to send me to school. So I figured if I was going to go to college, I'd go and let the military pay for it. That was the initial plan. You get to Fort Bragg and everything changes. Fort Bragg, it's a big deal in North Carolina, but I did not know that Fort Bragg was such a big deal Army wide. Fort Bragg is the apex. They got some really, really, really high speed guys at Fort Bragg. This is the pinnacle of the United States Army. The best of the best go to this place. And I am showing up as an 18-year-old kid at Fort Bragg in the mid 90s. And I don't know what I'm getting into. Fort Bragg, you got the best of the best there. The Secretary of Defense right now was a colonel back then at Fort Bragg. You had Stan McChrystal, Fort Bragg. You had Petraeus, Fort Bragg. They were all there when I showed up. I mean, you're talking about legends of our current military today were lieutenant colonels and colonels back then. So for me to show up as an 18-year-old kid and I'm witnessing history right in front of me every single day, not knowing that these guys are going to be the people who make policy, who drive policy. I'm seeing what right looks like. I'm seeing what leadership looks like. I'm seeing what it looks like to lead men when it's difficult, when it's cold, when it's wet, when you're tired, when you're hungry. I'm getting to witness all of this at 18 years old.
I tell you, I feel like I got a buddy who's in the first ID. I feel like I got to get some equal time to some of these other units, right? But I hear what you're saying. But let me just also say, for a kid that says, "Oh, I'm not too smart," that's a pretty smart decision what you did.
In North Carolina, well, at least in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, in what we call the Piedmont, right? This is where our news every day, the news stations that come on every day, they show something from Fort Bragg every day. Every day, something about Fort Bragg or Fayetteville was going on. So when I get a chance to choose to where I want to go, part of me isn't even thinking about anywhere else. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to just go back home. I'm going to get as close as I can to where I grew up at. Not knowing that Fort Bragg, yeah, it's close, but it's basically a world away from where I grew up at. Location wise, distance wise, it's 2 hours. But culturally, it's worlds away from where I grew up at. When I first came to the military, I didn't come in as an infantry guy. I came in as an aviation operations specialist. My mom was like, "Hey, we want to get you an office job, son. You don't want to have to work the rest of your life, use your back." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Let me go and get an office job." And working on an airfield is as office gets. You're a copier machine. I learned so much about Xerox machines. It was crazy. Printer, paper, printer, ink, figuring out how to fix paper jams is what it came down to. Yeah, I worked around helicopters, but I wasn't turning no wrenches or nothing like that. I wasn't flying in helicopters. I was working in an office.
Then, obviously, September 11th happens. Are you on post at the time, or where are you?
So September 11th rolls around, man. I'm already on my third duty station by this point. I am at Fort Campbell, Kentucky at this point. I'm in the 101st Airborne Division, which is like the rival division for the 82nd. It's like the rival division, right? So I'm there. I'm stationed there. I had just finished doing morning PT, so they're on Central Time. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And somebody runs in, the radio announcer is like, "Hey, we got to cut the station. We got to cut the station for a second. Someone has just run an airplane into the World Trade Center." Now, keep in mind, back in the 90s, the World Trade Center had already been attacked once. I didn't think it was anything bigger than the first one. The first one, it was a bomb that went off in the World Trade Center back in the early 90s. I thought it was something like that. Most of us were alive to we were all around during that time. Oh, World Trade Center, it's a bomb. Okay, all right, that's probably what happened. They'll fix it, they'll clean it up. Little do we know that this was going to set off a sequence of events over the next few years that would change everything.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't know what it's like. I'm sitting here thinking, grabbing your gear almost because you're like, it's going to get real fast. Are you a ranger at that point?
Not yet. Not yet. I had gone to Ranger School, but I didn't graduate the first time when I went to Ranger School. But I had been to Ranger School. I'd already gone to the Ranger Battalion, but I had not gone. I had not graduated from Ranger School, which is why I'm at the 101st at that point in time. So I get to witness exactly how things work. Now, for the average person, when September 11th hits, for the average American, it's horrifying. For the average soldier, it's very horrifying too. We got loved ones that are in New York City. But for the infantrymen, for the average infantryman, there is almost not like and please don't misunderstand me, we're not excited that this happens on our soil, but we are so excited because now we can go and do something about it. When you train every day to defend your country, an opportunity arises to where you can now get in the game. Not to trivialize this, but now we can actually go and do something about it for the first time in our lives. And there's a sense of anticipation that comes out. When you train every day to go to war, when you're working on your marksmanship, when you are out there doing foot patrols, when you're training 15 hours a day for years on end, the moment somebody attacks this country, you are like, let me at them. And keep in mind, this is happening every day, all day, every year. Right now, someone is training to defend this country, and it will happen for eternity.
So then, I mean, I'm gonna jump ahead here. You get deployed, right? I assume multiple deployments.
My first deployment, it was into Iraq. This was 2003. Saddam is supposedly have weapons of mass destruction. We get deployed to Kuwait, and you're talking about it's not just one unit; it's every major infantry division unit that exists. We are all poised to go into Iraq. The other half of the army, the other half of the military is poised to go into Afghanistan or already in Afghanistan. So now we're fighting on two different fronts at this point in time. This is where my generation of men and women, this is where we get a chance to make good on our promise to defend this country.
Now we want to get to the big story here, right? There are people listening on this podcast. They probably haven't heard this. At some point, you're in Afghanistan or Iraq.
There's three deployments. So I got three tours of combat. One in Iraq and two in Afghanistan. My third deployment is in 2012. As a matter of fact, 11 years ago, right now, I'm in Afghanistan.
So your job is to do what? You're a ranger. You're in country.
So by this time, yep, I'm an Army Ranger. I am at this point a platoon sergeant. At this point, I had already had a number of different jobs in the infantry. I had been a sergeant first class, which is a grade under a first sergeant, and then I deployed again as a platoon sergeant. So it's just anybody who knows these roles, you operate at a pay grade higher than what you're getting paid. And then there are times where someone comes in and you go revert back to your duty. But this time I am a sergeant first class, and we are going into villages each day. Sometimes we're going in to do assessments. Sometimes we're going in to protect the village. But oftentimes what it is we're just having a presence. It's a presence patrol. We're walking through villages. We're maintaining order. We are, if there's Taliban and they are happen to shoot at us, we're defending ourselves. And it's every day, every day. You're going on a patrol at some point in time. You're going into an active village with live bullets getting shot at you, and you having live ammunition and defending yourself and shooting back. This is a really tough summer for our military that summer. We lost a lot of good men in the summer of 2012. And sure enough, the day that we were talking about, we were going to go into the small village, probably no bigger than your average mall parking lot. It's not big at all. We're going in and we're going to find this small little house that has what we got tipped off that there was a 2 or 3 man operation out of this little hut. And in this hut, there's supposedly explosives, there's supposedly ammunition. These were the guys that were targeting foot patrols, resupply patrols. They were blowing up vehicles, shooting at aircraft. They were targeting U.S. Army logistic operations and combat operations. We're going in there not to fight anybody. This was a reconnaissance patrol. This is what is to build a case to be able to level this building and to obviously capture these people.
These are bomb makers in this little house, and you're going in there to check it out. And just real quick, Cedric, what day it was?
It's probably a Wednesday, maybe July 25th, 2012.
Every day you're going out on these patrols, and now take it away. Tell what happens next.
We're going to this little town called Azagzai. Now, the thing about it is, this place has been. We've gone into this place before as a company, and every platoon that has gone into this place has been attacked. There's not been one patrol to go in there that has not had some sort of injury. Men have lost their legs, their eyesight, all types of stuff. Every platoon has taken some sort of injury or casualty in this little village. So we're going into it, but we're not going in there to fight. We're just going in there to do a recon and get out of there. We get to this little hut, and it is like we hit the jackpot. It was like everything that we were looking for was in there. Ammunition, explosive materials, power sources, wires, everything that you would need to make a homemade explosives. Obviously, Afghanistan is a farming culture, so fertilizer is used to grow things, but it's also used in bomb making material. So we hit the jackpot. We're taking out digital cameras. Everything is going according to plan. We're actually ahead of schedule. We're going to get back to the outpost early so that we can get on telephones early so that we can call home and talk with our families. That was the plan. We're going to go knock out this mission and then get home before anybody else is done so we can call home and talk with wives and talk with the kids and stuff like that. That was a perfect plan. 5-10 minutes into the operation, we're almost done. As a matter of fact, we're going so good that I make a decision to go outside and let the guys on the outer perimeter know, hey, we're good to go. Hey, go ahead and pick it up and get ready to move back. Right before I leave the threshold of the door, right before I get to the threshold of the door, I step on an IED. Now, I'd heard explosions before. I've blown stuff up, but I've never been standing on top of a blast. This is where everything changes at. And you never think that it could happen to you, right? You know that danger is always there, but just the way that we think, most people don't think that today is their day. And just so happens, I step on this IED, explosion happens. It's not like in the movies where you see, like you hear this mouse click, where it's like click. It's not like that. It's so well hidden, you never even know it's there. It's right at the threshold. Whoever put it there knew that this should be the path where somebody walks at, and whoever's operating in it knows not to step on certain places. I get blown up. There is instantly a hole in the ground that I fall into, and I try to stand back up because your natural instincts when you get knocked down is to stand back up. Well, at this time, I'm trying to stand back up, and something's not working.
Yeah, so it didn't knock you out.
No, it didn't knock me out. There's a concussion. And keep in mind, I played sports my whole life. I've never had a concussion before, so I didn't know what it was. First time, everything your brain gets rattled, and things are starting to slow down incrementally. It feels like everything's in like slow motion. Felt like maybe for 45 seconds things were in slow motion, but then the brain comes back and figures everything out. I'm trying to stand back up. I think we're under attack. I'm not quite sure what had happened. I thought maybe somebody had thrown a grenade or something. But sure enough, it's an IED and it's me. I stepped on it. I'm looking at my body. I'm looking at the ground. There's blood everywhere. This arm, like I could see for the first time, I'm looking through. If you've ever been to biology class, if you ever been to anatomy class where you go into the classroom and you see that skeleton, you see like the little skeleton, it's like a little hanging from like some. I'm seeing the arm part of it where the two bones are right here. It's like the radial bone and the ulnar bone. I'm like looking at both of them, like there's no skin here.
And that's your right arm.
So I'm a right-handed shooter in the military. I'm a right-handed shooter. So I'm holding my M4 carbine. I'm holding it. At the point of impact, the blast, basically the rifle gets ripped out of my hand, but so does part of my, like half my arm gets like ripped off. And the great thing about it is you can't even feel most of it because your body has not quite understood what has happened yet. But what I could start to feel is the shrapnel. Shrapnel's really hot, and it's like all over my body. It's like really, really hot. If you've ever been, have you ever fried anything and the grease pops on you? It feels like that, but it's like all over your body though. That was the first real uncomfortable experience.
So obviously now your buddies, your brothers, right? They get you, and they must tie up your legs, right? And they get you medevaced out of there. Did you pass out at some point?
I did. I did. I remember. I remember just about everything. I remember just about everything up until we get to the hospital, to the MASH hospital, basically. We go into this little tent. After that, I go into like a coma. But the blast, the helicopter ride, all of that, I still remember all that.
It's just really unbelievable. This whole story, just not even possible. 10 years later, and here we are, man. And they start to put you back together.
I want to say this before you go any further. It's by the grace of God that I'm talking to you right now. Nobody I knew had made it after stepping on IED and losing both legs. Nobody I knew had made it this far. And at the time, I was certain that if this is my moment, I'm probably about to check out. I was optimistic, but I understood that this is something that could potentially happen. And by the grace of God, I'm talking to you right now. I had two hand grenades on my body. Neither one of them detonated. Two, two fragmentation grenades. And if you know anything about grenades, the only thing that's stopping them from exploding is a small little pin. Small little pin. No bigger than a safety pin is holding this whole thing together. I had two of them on. Neither one of them detonated. That's by the grace of God. It's a miracle. I give God the glory every day for having me be here.
And also, there's the people around you. I assume there's a medic that gets over there quick and starts, we got to tie off this bleeding and all this business. And it truly is. I appreciate you saying that because, look, man, here you are.
Aaron Keller. Aaron Keller is his name. He ran over to me. He ran over to me. Got me on the helicopter at my platoon. We had trained for this for months, man. We always trained that this injury would happen to someone else, not knowing that it would happen to me. So I just want to always give thanks to God and give thanks to the men that helped me be here today.
I'm fascinated that you're actually awake during all this. This is crazy to me. But anyways, you get back, and I guess they get you to Germany or something, and maybe back to the U.S. at some point. Is there some point where they say like, "Hey, dude, you're not going to walk"? What happens when you start to get your head around what happened?
My wife and my mom were actually at the hospital when I came out of the coma. Just about 8 days later. It's August. It's now like August the 2nd. A week has passed, and my wife and my mom are there as I wake up. And my wife is explaining to me what had happened, but I don't know the full details of the whole legs thing. Because the last memory that I had was there was blood everywhere, and I had seen like my boots that were basically they looked like you had put my boots into like a blender or something like that. That's the last thing that I remember. I don't remember them actually being amputated. So my wife explains to me the extent of what had happened. My outlook on life at this point was super low, man.
That's what I'm asking. I'm getting at because this is the turnaround point. At some point, it's the turnaround. So, yeah, how'd you feel when you got your head around
This is the lowest moment of my life. I could not even imagine things being this painful. Not just physically painful, but more emotionally painful. I had nurses bringing me powerful painkillers, but when you sit there and you think about the outlook of your life and how if things could get better, so many things. Why did this have to happen to me? I thought that If I did good, good would happen to me. Bad things aren't supposed to happen to people that do good. I didn't hurt anybody. I try to live my life right. I don't deserve this. I don't feel like I deserve this. This seems like a punishment. And what did I do to deserve this? There's a lot of soul searching, a lot of lonely nights, a lot of tears, man, months and months of just not having any answers. And for a lot of people, that moment is enough to do you in, or to be angry at God, or to be angry at the situation, or to be angry at the people that did this to you. But this was the most valuable moment of my life. And I'll tell you why. I was not being punished. It wasn't a punishment. It was actually a gift. You say, well, how in the world could you say that? This is the lowest moment of your life. How could you look at it as a gift? This is a punishment. At the least, it was something that you regret happening, right? No, it was the very opposite. It's the very opposite. It took me a while to get this perspective, but I will tell you this. Understanding it now is this. If you are going to have any power in life, it's not going to come from the outside. It's not going to come from material wealth. It's going to come from the inside. If you think about it, every single superhero that you know of, every single one of them, man, Batman, Superman, Hulk, all these guys, they had some sort of superpower. But that superpower came out of some kind of super problem. Every single one of them. Superman's entire planet blew up. Batman saw his mom and dad get blown away right in front of him as a 10-year-old. Hulk, the laboratory exploded. And I think that this is a way so that all of us can understand that no matter what challenge you are facing, the challenges do not come to take something from you. The challenges come to give you something. Yes, yes. The laboratory exploded. Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider. Whatever the case may be, these problems, they endow power. Don't think for 1 second that the diagnosis, that the house burning down, that the bankruptcy, that the divorce, that the kid that can't get on the right path, whatever it may be, don't think for a second that this is something that has come to deplete you. This is actually something that has come to give you power that you currently do not have.
I'm sitting here thinking about the fact, Cedric, you're talking about Batman, Superman. I love it. But here you're like a real life superhero, man. And you're not the only one. When did you figure out, like, okay, I can't just wallow in this deal?
So in North Carolina, I mean, as you know, it's the Bible Belt, but I always been raised in church, so that's the foundation. All right. Now, if you are in a place and you're listening to this, and maybe you weren't raised in the church, say, well, I don't know how that all works. But for me, a lot of my foundation was from the church, and there are numerous stories in the Bible where people in the Bible overcame so many things, one of which that stood out at that point was a guy named Job. There's a whole book in the Bible that has a young man named Job that had everything taken away from him. Everything taken away from him. His loved ones, his livelihood, even his health depleted. But this man hung in there. And it was one of those things where he even questioned God. And Lord knows I did too. But it came around to where I was sitting there one day and a quote pops up and it says something like, with every dose of adversity, there is also an equal dose of blessing. Now, the big thing about it is your job isn't to sit around and wait on when the blessing is going to show up. Your job at this moment is to continue to be the best version of yourself that you can be. The blessing will show up. Your job isn't to sit around and wait for it to pop up. Your job is to be the best person you can be until the blessing shows up. It will happen. It will happen. There's lows and there's highs in life. There's hills and valleys in nature. There's nighttime, there's daytime. There's winter, there's summer. There's tough times, and there's going to be good times. Your job isn't to sit around and wait for when the good time is going to show up. No, your job is to continue to be good until the good shows up. And when the good does show up, it has to, by law of nature, it has to be the equivalent or better than the low that just occurred.
Yeah, and some might say, "Look, man, Job, you're right. If you know the story of Job, the book of Job, it doesn't get as bad, right? But you're in a pretty Job like situation there, right? It looks like it's over. All your dreams of what you were going to do and everything. So that's the moment where you pull through and you think, okay, there's blessing here. When's that blessing going to come around?
But even with that though, it's still automatically not getting better immediately, right? Just because I have this newfound insight, just because I have this new quote, it did not automatically make things easier the next day. It was just as hard as the day before. But what had changed is my outlook. And sometimes if you could just have your outlook changed just by 1%, it can help you make it through a tough time. It's like if your gas tank is on E and the motor won't crank. You don't need a whole full tank, but just a couple drops of gas can get you to the gas station. This is where I was. I just needed a little bit, a 1%, just to get me to the gas station. And that helped me get through it. Also, my family, and also the focus that the military put inside me. Those three things: faith, focus, family. Those three things right there, you can revolutionize your life.
But I know enough about your story, and I heard you tell this that there's a lot of work that goes on now too. So we're going to get to the point here. We're coming up on the end of our time. We spent some time, and I kind of love it because we're going to live a little cliffhanger here. I'm gonna. This is why people got to come to see this, hear how this story ends in Indianapolis, right? We didn't plan this, Cedric, but it's working out pretty good. And this whole point that is, then you come back, not just come back, but man, you are reborn into this new version of yourself after this blessing of this IED and this hut in nowhere Afghanistan. And so now, again, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna tell people what happens because it's your story after this, right? After, but you work, right? It's this, you believe, you think, and then it's not like it's handed to you just thinking like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. Then it gets real.
It's a lot of work that goes into it. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to spoil it either. I'm notorious for telling the end of the movie, but I would just say, in my life, so many things have happened to where now that I look back at me losing those legs, the things that I will be sharing with you in Indianapolis, I could just tell you this: losing my legs is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. That sounds crazy, right? I'm in the airport the other day, and it takes me longer to get the baggage claim than pretty much anybody on the airplane. It takes me longer to do things. I work way harder. I was at the VA. I was at the VA the other day, and I will tell you this: when people see that you're going through something that's difficult, I will tell you, man, it's inspiring for people. I did the Boston Marathon. This is so crazy, right? So the Boston Marathon Monday.
You did the Boston Marathon on Monday. We're talking on Friday.
This is a classic example of having a different mental perspective. I did this to Boston Marathon this past Monday, 4 days ago. I'm on a hand cycle. Normally I would run it. Normally I run it on my running blades, but this particular time I'm actually on a hand cycle. A hand cycle is no different than a bicycle. You need a chain. You need a chain. Well, guess what? At mile 17, the chain pops off. I am in the middle of a rainstorm, and the chain pops off. There's people everywhere in Boston. If you're listening to this from Boston, you all are a different breed of people. You're the only people I know that come out and support people on in rainstorms. But people are seeing me struggle going up this hill, and they see that there's a chain that pops off. Now, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, it's a small setback, no big deal. I'll fix the chain. Well, here's the problem. When you're on the side of a hill and you're trying to fix a chain, only one or two things are going to happen. You can fix the chain, but you're going to be rolling off the hill. One of the greatest moments in my life was to witness people seeing me struggle, run out of the crowd, come over to help me out, and to see me start again. You would have thought that I just scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. The crowd went wild, and the thing about it is, it lets me see that people are not so concerned about what happens when things go wrong. They are so inspired about what you do after things go wrong. What are you doing? Everybody has stuff go wrong, but what are you going to do after things go wrong? That is what changes people.
We talk about that a lot in our world of, it happens in all workplaces and, get together people. You're going to have setbacks, right? You're going to have, and it's going to seem like, man, we can't do it. This is it. This is the end. And what you find is there's a lot of people standing by that can come over and give you a hand.
But I will say this. They don't, people will come by and help, but they want to see you working hard. Man, you gotta give it up first. You got to get out there and bust your hump. And people will come. But you gotta see you working first. I'm not sure if you can remember. You ever drove 5-speed?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course.
There used to be this thing where if you're on a 5-speed, and your motor was messing up, you could do something called pop the clutch. But to pop the clutch, you had to push the car or get it on the downhill, and then you hit the clutch and you could start the engine up. Well, the car's got to be moving before you can do that. The car's got to be moving before the engine works. The car's got to be moving, especially on a 5-speed. That's what it is in life as well. You got to be moving. If you're moving, then things can happen. You can't sit there and just let it happen. You got to be moving, man.
So many lessons here, Cedric. But, one of them is like, people could have picked you up and carried you down to the finish line, right? They could have carried you to the top of the hill, pushed you down the hill. So it is about like, what are you going to bring to it? That mindset and knowing them, and you get some low points, but that's when you got to figure out, okay, how do I fix the chain? Who's going to help me here, right? It's just an unbelievable story. I mean, surely they're making a movie about your story. Somebody's got to be making.
No, we're working on it. I will say that.
That's good. That's fine, man. I want to see Cedric King star Cedric King. That's what I want to see. I think you can handle it because I don't think there's much you can't handle. I'm going to bring it to a close, and I love it. We've told like half of this story, and we can't wait to see you. What's your mission now? Let's wrap up with that. What is your mission now?
I think my mission now is to help people understand that it's not just Cedric. It's each one of us. My mission is also to glorify God Almighty. Every day that I wake up, it's a gift, man. So I know that I'm not even supposed to be here. So every single day that I can, I'm going to try and do my best to get God the best gas mileage that He can out of what He gave me left, man.
Can't wait to meet you in person. It's going to be a real honor for me and the people who can be there. And thank you for sharing your story today. We really appreciate you, brother.
All right, so I'll see you. They call it Naptown. I will see you in Naptown in August, all right?
I've been talking with Cedric King, a retired Army Master Sergeant, speaker, and author, who will be a keynote speaker at NCSL's Legislative Summit in Indianapolis in August. Thank you for joining me and Cedric on this episode of Legislatures, The Inside Story, brought to you by the National Conference of State Legislatures.
You can check out all the podcasts from the National Conference of State Legislatures by searching for NCSL Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Tim Story, NCSL CEO, hosts Legislatures, The Inside Story, where he focuses on leadership and legislatures. The Our American States podcast dives into some of the most challenging public policy issues facing legislators. On Across the Aisle, host Kelly Griffin tells stories of bipartisanship. Also check out our special series, Building Democracy, on the history of legislatures.